We all like a good surprise. It catches you off guard and gets you wondering what exactly you were expecting. The problem is, you get a similar reaction from being let down, and that isn't as enjoyable. We build them up so high only to watch them fall so far. Especially nowadays, fuck. Companies put so much time, effort and money into getting people excited for their video games that when they finally come out and aren't as good as first thought, you feel at least a little bit betrayed. Maybe we expect too much, but if you market your game as the second coming of the deity of your choosing, you're writing a check your game can't possibly cash. You're not winning this one. And that's the thing. There are so many video games out there now that if you're a little down after playing a game that you were looking forward to for some time, you can bite the bullet and move on to something else. So, in order for a game to get on a list about the worst of the worst, there's gotta be a little something extra. Some games are bad, some are disappointing. I argue the latter is way more painful. This job is hard some days. Thinking about video games and trying to put various parts of them into some kind of order brings up all sorts of questions. Some are easier to answer than others. Will Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild be good? Almost certainly. Is the world ready for a live-action Pokemon movie? You bet your life on it. And yet the one that I struggle with on an almost daily basis, because my life is shallow and uninteresting enough that I dwell on trivial matters that only serve to distract me long enough that I don't notice my steadying decline towards shrugging off this mortal coil. What the fuck happened to Destiny? More and more now I've started having reservations whenever I hear that games are being made by the same studio that made a famous game in the past. The ever-changing gaming climate means that you can't always build a game in the same way that you would have liked. Bungie also made Halo? Good, but doesn't matter that much. It's worth pointing out that right up until Destiny was released in 2014, the fervour surrounding it was unbelievable. You've got Bungie, yeah, the guys who made Halo, working on a new IP built from the ground up with 20 odd years of experience to be this spectacular new game set in this engrossing new world, and no. Even with the reported and equally disputed budget of $500 million, the Destiny that graced our screens in September 2014 was a mere shell. A campaign that spends 4 hours sending you from one location to the next with very little explanation of what you're doing and, you know, a brief insight into this massive world that you're supposed to be exploring. Multiplayer lacking a lot of key features and a broken loot system. Why the game was released in such an unfinished state remains a bit of a mystery, but whether or not the game was downsized due to multiple layoffs at Bungie, or if Activision locked chunks out of the game to keep aside for DLC, the state the game was released to the world in, which took $60 out of your wallet if you wanted in on this, simply didn't match up with everything that came before. Of course, and rather predictably, support has continued with Destiny, and a lot of the problems were fixed when The Taken King was released as DLC last year, and supposedly Rise of the Iron is doing more of the same this year, but still, you can't expect people to sit down quietly when this is how you introduce a new IP to the world. Even with the shooting being pretty good, guys, it's basically Halo. I imagine a bunch of people were put off Destiny after the first installment. Like me. Granted, I now live somewhere where I can't possibly play it again since my internet is made out of cheese, but still kind of valid. This is what $500 million gets you nowadays. When it comes to generating hype and raising excitement levels beyond perhaps where they should be, no single event in the gaming calendar raises expectations quite like E3. Though equally, while it can set a good precedent for a game, it can also leave you questioning what exactly you're watching and why someone thought this would sell their game to onlookers.
Hello everyone, I'm the director.
Oh no. Oh, what the what is this?
Okay, so here, I have to cut vertically.
Oh. Is it safe? And yet the most painful E3 showcase I've seen was also one of the best, where in 2012 we were given a glimpse into the future of gaming with a gameplay demo of some new IP called Watch Dogs. Kinda like GTA combined with a hacking mechanic that you can use to manipulate the environment around you to your will. Great concept, and the trailer did an impressive job of showing all of this off. A little too well. Some say that they saw this coming, we call those people assholes, but by the time Watch Dogs came out 2 years later, it wasn't really the same game. You have to reserve some natural skepticism when playing a big AAA game on release day, but even after the dust had settled and Watch Dogs started to resemble a functioning product, it didn't look like a completely finished one. For the amount of money that went into it and for how much excitement Ubisoft were drumming up, you would think that the end result would be a game with a bit more polish. Of course, it isn't all bad. There's some fun to be had in stealth sections, and when the game is kind enough to give you things to hack, you've got some freedom to use them how you see fit, but it's impossible not to judge this game by what we was shown in 2012. 2 years before, we had this dynamic, fluid action game. Now it's actually here, we've got a game that lacks bullet impact textures. Seriously, how the fuck do you forget that nowadays? And while Watch Dogs was disappointing in a way that gave enough hope for a sequel that would fix these problems, the disingenuous way in which the first trailer was handled means that you can't really have any hope for the second game. I mean, it looks good, but so did the demo for the first game, and look how that went. Actually, this one looks better. The trailer for the first game is more impressive than the trailer for the second game. What does that even mean? Maybe we do live in a strange society full of contradictions. Best-selling Ubisoft game right here. As you develop successive games within the same series, you find out what people like and what they hate and strive to improve with each new entry into the franchise. I mean, of course you do. You might be after a bigger paycheck every time, but if you can please more critics as you go, you'll probably feel happy with your efforts. So, 1998, Sonic Adventure. The first attempt at transitioning from 2D Sonic gameplay to 3D, and it has problems, but I'd be disappointed if it didn't. Not a perfect game, but, you know, it gives it character and a platform on which to build a better game. Sonic Heroes, it's okay. But we're still working towards something big, yeah? Something next gen. Yeah. No. Saying Sonic 06 is a bad game is hardly a revelation. I feel like it's one of the few games out there that no one will defend. It's almost like assembling a firing squad around a barrel of fish. But for all of the problems that the game has, was there anything to get excited for before it became this terrible game? Kind of. I'm not about to defend Sonic 06 since there are other, more dignified ways to sound like a pretentious game critic who can find positives in the bleakest circumstances, but as they sometimes say, hindsight is a wonderful thing. The fact that Sonic 06 is sometimes referred to as Sonic Next Gen shows just what kind of game it was supposed to be. Ambitious and yet misguided in a lot of places. If you look close enough, you can see the potential here for a decent enough game, but between the development team biting off more than they can chew, the game being rushed out for Sonic's 15th anniversary, and one of the most unnecessarily convoluted stories I've ever seen with more holes in it than a fucking cheese grater, it's a total shit show. Could it have been something more? I don't know, not sure I've really covered how stupid that story is. But hey, at least the people in charge learned their lesson and moved Sonic in the right direction, for the most part. So clearly rushing an unfinished game out of the door doesn't work, but does that mean that you can sit on a game for years at a time? Evidently, delays have the potential to offer up a great opportunity to go through your game's coding with a fine-tooth comb, but this isn't usually why games are delayed nowadays. Think of it from a corporate point of view. To push a game's release date to a different quarter, there needs to be a pretty big reason. Less that you want more time to playtest it, and more, guys, this game seriously isn't finished, we spent the last couple of weeks playing Pokemon Go, we might need a bit more time. Or maybe you can have the problems that Duke Nukem Forever had. There's a reason why Half-Life 3 will likely never happen. Apart from the fact that Valve are doing kind of alright at the moment, not making a highly anticipated game for so long and suddenly throwing it at people who aren't as excited for it as they were originally doesn't work well. Once upon a time, the masses were really excited for a new Duke Nukem game, but time and a one-way trip through development hell led to numerous delays and virtually starting from scratch with every new studio that chose to drink from this poisoned chalice. The end product isn't surprising. Despite having 14 years to make a game, there's huge parts of Duke Nukem Forever that feel like they were put together earlier that week. Duke's still there with as much subtlety as a napalm enema, but I don't think it works here. You can mock and reference all these other games, but all that it does is remind me that I'd much rather be playing those games instead. There's a point where you stop laughing with Duke Nukem and start laughing at what it's become. Can you feel sorry for a game where you can fling shit at a wall? In being a consumer who has a vested interest in video games, you naturally have expectations based off of previous experiences. So when you play a game that turns out to be significantly more ass than you would have hoped, you feel let down, but frankly, who cares? Go play another game, there's loads out there. But as soon as the relationship goes beyond customer and product and veers more into the path of investor and investment, suddenly the stakes are raised. Disappointment goes further than seeing potential unfulfilled, more like your money being wasted. That's not going to sit well with anyone. I imagine years down the road we'll be looking back at Mighty No. 9 as a perfect case study for horrendous mismanagement. Weird to think now that this all started with such strong optimism. Keiji Inafune leaves Capcom refused to make any more Mega Man games, Inafune takes to Kickstarter to drum up financial support for a spiritual successor, and just like that, fans of Mega Man had something to get behind and ultimately look forward to. It's such a beautiful thing, you wouldn't want to ruin that. Between numerous delays, a lack of communication between concept and investors, and one of the worst launches of all time, Mighty No. 9 went from being a bright hope for the future to one of gaming's greatest disappointments. On day one, there were complaints that the PC version was being identified as a virus and that the Wii U port was bricking Wii U's, and even if you got in, you got an opportunity to play a graphically watered-down, tedious shadow of a Mega Man game with unlikable characters and a plot that I'm pretty sure no one cared about. All of this coming from a budget of close to $4 million from over 67,000 backers. Of course, hype dwindled with each delay to the game, but as I said earlier, delays are there for improvement, a chance to refine what's already there for a better end result. God knows what this game would have been like if it came out when it was supposed to. This has been RabbidLuigi, and it's easy to think that Mighty No. 9's failings paint Kickstarter in a bad light, but you've got to remember that the vast majority of the problems associated with Mighty No. 9 are self-inflicted. In recent memory, Kickstarter has given us the likes of Honey Pop, Lisa, the Oculus Rift, and some weird obscure game that no one's ever heard about called Undertale. There isn't a damn thing wrong with Kickstarter. You don't blame the tools. You blame the tools using the tools. Got a topic that you'd like me to discuss in a countdown? Leave a suggestion in a comment below and head over to my Twitter, where I'll be holding a vote to decide the subject of the next countdown based off the best of your submissions. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed that. This video is a week late. I mentioned 2 weeks ago that I was in a musical and I tried to make it work with my schedule, but there wasn't enough time. Didn't want to have to rush a video out. But it's not all bad, it gave me enough time to play a bunch of new games and experiment around with Pokemon Go, which is pretty convenient since I plan to talk about it next week. A window opens when a door closes, or something like that. What's the quote? I don't know, it's 4 in the morning here. I'm gonna go to sleep and, have a lovely day.